Now back in the day, if you wanted yourself a shiny new phone but you were on a really tight budget, chances are you'd probably end up with some heavy, clunky, paperweight device that was only good for downloading crazy frog ringtones via WAP and braining anyone who then commented on said ringtones in a derogatory manner. But thankfully the situation is much improved, and as we hit the cold dark bit of 2021, you can definitely snaffle yourself a variety of great budget smartphones from Motorola, Nokia, Oppo, Xiaomi and others, boasting massive HD screens, 5G support, proper gaming grunt, and features you won't even find on considerably more expensive smartphones such as a headphone jack and expandable storage. So come, take my hand in a purely platonic fashion as I lead you through the best budget smartphones you can snaffle yourself in the UK right now for under £200, which I've personally tested and reviewed. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So one of the best cheapy phones you'll find at this price point is Motorola's Moto G30, a handset that boasts solid specs and a slick, clean version of Android. As far as looks go, the Moto G30 sure ain't anything special. Like most budget phones, this is another plastic blower offering little in the way of frills or flare, although it is at least splash resistant if you have yourself a bit of an accident. And what you get here is a very lovable stock Android experience, which has been bolstered by a shed load of bonus Motorola features, stuff that we all know and love, like that excellent karate chop torch effort and lots of gesture controls as well. The 6.5-inch IPS screen is unfortunately only a 720p res effort, so it's not exactly supremely crisp, but those visuals are reasonably punchy and you've got a 90Hz refresh, so everything looks buttery smooth. The Snapdragon 662 chipset can handle fast-paced games like Call of Duty Mobile, and Motorola's dedicated gaming mode can manage resources out of sight and block pesky notifications from buggering up your concentration. And that 5000 mAh battery means the Moto G30 will keep on going all day long, even with plenty of screen on time no matter what you're up to basically, and also the camera tech is very respectable for this price point. That 64 megapixel primary sensor does typically struggle in strong or low light, but it can otherwise snap some very decent looking pics of the fam, although the video mode does top off at full HD resolution. And all of the other features that you'd really hope would be on board the Moto G30 but you wouldn't necessarily expect at this sort of price point are present and correct. So you've got NFC for your contactless payments, you've got a good bit of headphone jack action, and you've got micro SD expandability so you can boost that storage when needed. So all in all, a couple of little issues aside like the 720p display, this is a very tasty package for a budget-friendly price. Another option at this price point is the Moto G50, which unlike the G30 boasts full 5G support, but it does also strip back some of the specs to keep the asking price under 200 quid. So this time around, instead of a 600 series Snapdragon, you've got a Snapdragon 480 chipset running the show. That's fine for your everyday shenanigans, although you will notice some little slowdown here and there, such as for instance when you're booting up the camera app. You also get a simpler 48 megapixel primary shooter, plus less storage than the G30, although at least both Motorola's support micro SD expandability. Besides those grumbles, many of the other features are the same as the G30, from the 90Hz 720p display to the 5000 mAh battery. And you get that same clean Android experience, although don't expect updates to come flying in. One of the only real problems with Motorola smartphones is they're generally not very well supported in the long term, so if you are hoping for lots of OS and security updates, you're generally waiting a bit longer than you would do from some rivals like Nokia. As long as you don't mind that too much, then there's lots to love about Motorola smartphones, especially the asking price. And actually for under £200 there is another Motorola blow you can bag yourself in summer 2021, the Moto G9 Plus, which is a bit more of an oldie but still a goldie. This is another plastic blower with a stock Android experience and an IPS screen, this time a flippin' massive 6.8 incher with a sharper Full HD Plus resolution and a hearty squirt of HDR10 Plus support. Although unlike the G30 and the G50, there is no variable refresh rate. Performance is pretty smooth thanks to the Snapdragon 730G chipset, with Qualcomm's capable Adreno 618 GPU and Moto's gaming tools making for a very satisfying gaming experience. It's once again a 5000 mAh battery, which again can keep you going all day long even with plenty of screen on time thanks to that efficient 700 series Snapdragon chipset. And like the other Motorola blows, the G30 and the G50, you once again get a headphone jack, you got your NFC support, and yeah, that tasty bit of micro SD action too. This package is rounded off by a perfectly respectable 64 megapixel primary camera backed by an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle effort just like the G30. Plus you got some macro and depth sensor shenanigans, all perfectly fine for everyday shooting even in fairly testing conditions. And if the sound of Motorola's Moto G9 Plus didn't quite butter your muffin, well maybe check out the Moto G9 Power instead. It's another hand-filling 6.8-inch plastic blower that lacks thrills and excitement but more than makes up for it with respectable specs. Performance is reasonably dependable thanks to the Snapdragon 662 platform backed by 4 gigs of RAM. You can even get stuck into some light gaming if you want to blow off some steam by blowing off someone else's face. Where the Moto G9 Power really shines is the excellent battery life. The other Motorola smartphones are very good with their 5000 mAh cells. The Power ups that to 6000 mAh, so if you're going away for an entire weekend, you don't want to bother packing your charger, no worries. And this Moto is fine for media streaming too, although the IPS screen drops from Full HD to 720p resolution, while the stereo speaker setup has also been culled, but thankfully not the headphone jack. Meanwhile, that triple lens rear camera, spearheaded by a 64 megapixel sensor, is unsurprisingly limited, and you lose the Plus model's 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle effort. Although the Moto G9 Power can still take good looking pics in respectable lighting, helped along by the AI smarts. Now, another brand that offers straight-laced stock Android smartphones is Nokia, this time with the added benefit of regular, dependable OS and security updates. And the Nokia 5.4 is definitely one you'll want to check out at this sort of price point at around 150-ish quid in summer 2021. This 6.4-inch smartphone suffers from standard Nokia tropes like the fat lip, harbouring some needless branding, plus that always pointless assistant button, but this dusk model is rather fetching in a moody, emo kind of way. Thankfully, the Nokia 5.4 has now been updated to Android 11, and you've got a good bit of Android 12 action to look forward to later in 2021 or possibly early 2022, depending on just how quickly Nokia gets its skates on with that one. Plus, you've got 3 years of security updates to look forward to as well, which is rather reassuring. You've got NFC support here in the UK and dual SIM support, plus a separate microSD slot to expand the storage. Meanwhile, that IPS screen is a mere 720p panel, but it's fine for streaming YouTube or browsing the old internet. Power and proceedings is the Snapdragon 662 chipset again, and once again this is fine for gaming on the go, while the 4000 mAh battery is near impossible to drain in a single day unless you really punish this thing. And slapped there on the back end of the Nokia 5.4, you've got a 48 megapixel primary camera sensor. This proves absolutely fine for shooting everyday photos, although the video quality was a bit of a mess, lots of focal pop and other issues. So if you want a smartphone to shoot lots of home movies of the kiddie winks or whatever, I would definitely say look elsewhere. For a bit more cash, you can grab the Nokia G50, which upgrades that connectivity to a tasty bit of 5G for some proper future-proofing. This 5G support comes courtesy of that Snapdragon 480 chipset again, just like on the Moto G50, and once again, the Nokia G50 can be a little bit sluggish at times, kind of like it just woke from a heavy session on the Blue Wickeds, but everyday shenanigans absolutely fine, messaging, media streaming, all that good stuff. Even some light gaming is fine, with online murder-thons like Call of Duty Mobile and PubG playing with a respectable frame rate. The Nokia G50's epic size 6.8-inch IPS screen offers a clear view of the action despite the basic HD resolution. It's also good for a bit of Netflix or YouTube streaming when you tire of shooting strangers in their kneecaps. And that 5000 mAh battery means all day streaming and gaming, no worries. Headphone jack, check. Expandable storage, yep, you got that, and a good bit of NFC for your contactless payments as well. So all the features you would hope to find in a budget smartphone are there. Once again, you got that lovely stock version of Android with years of guaranteed OS and security updates. And while I wasn't expecting much from the 48 megapixel main camera sensor, it's not bad for family pics and the like, as long as the lighting isn't too dim. You can also shoot okay-ish full HD home movies and snap your gorgeous mug with that 8 megapixel selfie cam. And if your budget is tighter than a guppy's bumhole, then you might also be swayed by the Oppo A53, which cost you around 130 quid as we near the end of 2021, and that is an absolute bargain. This phone is a proper superstar, offering a smooth everyday experience, 2 days of battery life, and the standard stuff like NFC and expandable storage. That display is a mere HD one once more, but it's not bad at all for kicking back with some YouTube or whatever, and impressively you've got a 90Hz max refresh rate too, not to mention a stereo speaker setup and strong audio chops. However, it's not all good news. Oppo is being very slow with the Android updates, and of course not everyone will get on with the ColorOS launcher as well, which is quite a big fat heavy one sat there on top of Android. Does add some great features, but also can be rather clunky in places. The A53's Snapdragon 460 chipset and 120Hz touch response rate meant I stood a reasonable chance against the hordes of unwashed school kids when stumbling my way through online slogfests. And that 13 megapixel primary camera does a decent job of daily snaps, certainly for this asking price. Now next up in this roundup of the best budget smartphones costing under 200 quid is the excellent Poco X3 Pro from Xiaomi. And yes, admittedly the standard price for the Poco X3 Pro is just over 200 quid, but Xiaomi regularly puts on sales where it dips to just a gnat's pube under that price tag, and it's well worth waiting out and grabbing it when you see it at that sort of discounted price. The Poco X3 Pro is essentially a reinvigorated, updated version of the original Poco X3 NFC from last year. The main update being a massive performance boost courtesy of the Snapdragon 860 chipset that is packed inside. So the Poco X3 Pro can handle everything you want, even a bit of Genshin impact on low to medium settings. That 6.67-inch Full HD Plus IPS display can pump out sharp visuals and reasonably punchy colours, plus the adaptive refresh rate maxes out at 120Hz. There's a decent stereo speaker setup, plus a headphone jack and reliable Bluetooth streaming as well when you want to go wireless. You've got NFC support for your contactless payments, you've got a responsive edge-mounted fingerprint sensor, you've got all-day battery life, basically everything you could bloody well need. And I really like the Poco's 48 megapixel main camera sensor, which captures sharp pictures of even the most squirmy of subjects, as well as respectable 4K footage. In fact, beyond the slightly garish design, there's not really much to dislike about the Poco X3 Pro. It's proper lush. Of course, not everyone will get on with Xiaomi's MiUI 12 launcher, which is still very divisive indeed. It's quite a heavy launcher, throws in quite a lot of great bonus features, but it can also be a little bit quirky at times, shall we say, and there's generally a lot of crapware stuffed onto Poco and Xiaomi smartphones too. You also don't have the added reassurance of the guaranteed updates, the OS updates and the security updates of those Nokia smartphones, but as long as you can put up with all of that, then there's a lot to love about the Poco X3 Pro as far as the hardware and everything goes. If you find your budget's a little bit too tight to stretch up to that Poco X3 Pro, well, an alternative option that's a lot cheaper is the Poco M3 Pro 5G, which just freshly launched here in the UK. This serves up another highly respectable and slightly smaller 6.5-inch IPS screen, plus headphone jack and reliable Bluetooth support, so media fans will love it, especially when streaming video over a 5G network. Gaming is certainly possible as well, thanks to the Dimensity 700 platform, which adds that 5G connectivity, while the 5000 mAh battery means all-day play, no worries at all. We've got another 48 megapixel primary camera sensor slapped down the back of the Poco M3 Pro 5G as well, and this is decidedly limited when the conditions aren't great, but otherwise absolutely fine for just simple everyday snaps and home movies. And yeah, there are definitely a few quirks to this Poco smartphone as well, as you'd expect at this sort of budget price point. Again, so go check out my full in-depth review for all you need to know. Now, Xiaomi is another manufacturer offering a decent range of budget-friendly smartphones at this sort of price point with really impressive hardware. And one of my favorites right now for under 200 quid is the Redmi Note 10S. This 6.43-inch smartphone sticks with the same MiUI experience as those Poco phones, and likewise delivers some decent hardware for not much cash. The Helio G95 chipset can handle light gaming and doesn't struggle when it's pushed, while the 5000 mAh battery won't run dry unless you're seriously punishing this thing. You've got up to 128 gigs of storage expandable via micro SD, and that 64 megapixel rear camera sensor churns out some pretty good looking photos and video. That mighty display tops off at 60Hz refresh sadly, and the stereo speaker arrangement isn't exactly mind-blown, but for that low price this is a solid piece of kit. And pretty soon Xiaomi will also bring the budget-happy Redmi 10 to Europe. It's another sub £200 blower offering a 6.5-inch 90Hz screen, expandable storage, you've got a headphone jack, stereo speakers, incredibly good battery life, and a 50 megapixel main camera which once again can shoot some respectable family pics. And I've done you a full unboxing here on TechSpert if you want to know more on all of that. Now before I bugger right off, I'd also like to throw a bit of love at the Realme 8 5G, which these days, summer 2021, you can pick up for just a shade under 200 quid, and it offers some pretty respectable specs for that price, including of course a good bit of 5G support again, as the name kind of heavily suggests. The Realme 8 5G isn't as fully featured as the nifty Realme 8 Pro, but that MediaTek Dimensity 700 chipset makes for respectable performance. You've got a 90Hz IPS screen which is slick and sharp, and that long-lasting battery life means zero stress when you're out and about. Again, check out my unboxing for a full tour of this blower. Those are all the smartphones that I've reviewed that cost under £200 that you can grab right now as we head towards winter 2021 that I would personally recommend, and there are a few other options out there as well. I would say, however, do steer clear of Samsung smartphones under £200 because they tend to be a little bit pants. Stuff like the Galaxy A12, for instance, just the performance is far too juddery, the camera tech is usually pretty crap as well. What I would say is if you are really tempted to get yourself a budget Samsung smartphone, try and up your budget a bit and grab the Galaxy M32. That costs between sort of 200 and 250 quid, depending on if you manage to luck out and find it in a sale, and that is a solid all-round budget smartphone. So that's my list of the best budget smartphones under £200 right now, but have I missed off your own personal favourites that you're using right now and absolutely adore? Be great to hear from you down in the comments. For more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a fantastic rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!